Getting into the depth of these placements can save you from number of obstacles and challenges in life. Hello, Namaskar and Adab to all my friends from your friend astrologer and guide Irfan, once more with you from your very own channel Astro Assurance. We have been doing this series of planets in the different nakshatras, and we have done a number of house lords placed in different nakshatras so far, from the Lagna Lord, second Lord, third Lord, sixth Lord and so on. Today I will be doing the placement of the 8th house lord in different nakshatras. This is a very important placement because by virtue of where it is placed, the 8th house lord, we can understand what can be the challenges that can come forth for us, how to overcome those obstacles, those challenges, and how a transformation connected to that nakshatra can in fact help us to be able to derive the maximum benefit from that placement. So let's jump in and see how the placement of the 8th house lord in different nakshatras will turn out different results for us, different possibilities for us. Now when the 8th house lord is in the nakshatras of sun or sun ruled nakshatras, the sun ruled nakshatras have 1 pada in the fire signs and 3 padas in the earth signs, which means that it is a combination of the fire energies of passion, confidence, independence, bravery, artistic denotation, but at the same time the humility, the steadiness, the practicality and the detailed orientation of the earth energies as well. So when the 8th house lord goes into the nakshatra of Kritika, where 1 pada of Kritika is in Aries and 3 padas are in Taurus. So here, which means that all the results of the 8th house lord, which is about transformations, obstacles, sudden events, other people's money, insurances, inheritance and so on, all get related to the output of the Kritika nakshatra. So here the person will be passionate while also being transformative. Also at the same time will bring a lot of certain degree of criticality to how the person does his or her research, and will also be very aggressive in how the person will face changes, or will be assertive also to be able to face changes. In fact, the person will be quick in actions where changes are expected of that person or obstacles come forward for the person. However, at the same time, the person will also show a lot of stamina to be able to overcome a lot of upheavals and yet to be able to transform with the criticality that the Kritika nakshatra brings, but with the goal orientation of the Aries energy and the materialistic denotation of the Taurus ruled nakshatra. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Uttara Falguni, where 1 pada is in the Leo sign and the 3 padas are in the Virgo sign. So this is obviously, because it's a sun ruled nakshatra, a placement of high responsibility. However, because 1 pada is in the Leo sign, so with responsibility, with leadership, also comes the service orientation of 3 padas being in the Virgo sign. However, this is a very transformative placement because here the 8th house lord is getting placed in the nakshatra of Uttara Falguni. So here the person is very sincere in how the person goes about transformation or changes in his life. In fact, is active to bring about the changes when they see obstacles facing them. Yet at the same time, the person is very friendly in his approach. The person is very family oriented, and usually for family the person is ready to go through transformation or changes or challenges which are brought forth by the 8th house lord being present here. However, the person endures through the challenges, through the problems, through the transformation that the person needs to bring about, and in fact takes the leadership to bring about the challenges leading to transformation. So a person who is very ambitious, in fact in the face of challenges, obstacles, problems, yet is large-hearted enough to be able to give to people, or in shared property or in shared resources, is large-hearted enough to be able to give. Sometimes the person can also come about as a little egoistic in his transformation, or because the person has transformed and still brought about a huge change, a huge success. So a person should defend against that, or should guard against that when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Uttara Falguni. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Uttarashada, where one pada is in the Sagittarius sign, a fiery sign, and 3 padas are in the Capricorn sign. Now if you see, Sagittarius being a sign of resourcefulness, also taking risk, but also being somebody who is very learning oriented, very outgoing. So here when the 8th house lord gets placed in the nakshatra of Uttarashada, this person is very purposeful in his change. Is very purposeful in the transformation that is brought about when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Uttarashada. However, the person will also, in fact, carry himself with a lot of integrity in spite of challenges, in spite of obstacles, and the person will be very principled in the face of those issues, in the face of those sudden obstacles which have come about. Sometimes the person may come across as too idealistic in spite of going through those challenges, and yet be humanitarian enough that the person can come across as somebody who is very dedicated and disciplined, which is about the 3 padas being in the Capricorn sign. The person can handle the pressures which the 8th house lord's presence in the Uttarashada nakshatra will be brought about by. However, when the person goes through a transformation and may still get success because of the change that the person has embraced, then the person is also prone to flattery, and so the person has to guard against those issues which may come about after his transformation because of falling to those flattery. But at the same time, extremely intelligent placement where the person, because of his transformation or the way he faces the transformation, can bring about a lot of success because of his intelligent handling of that placement. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatras ruled by Mercury, Mercury ruled nakshatras have all the 4 padas in the water sign. So here the placement is also about imagination, emotions, intuitive ability and nurturing. At the same time bringing about the transformation in the face of obstacles, in the face of challenges. So when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Aslesha, where all 4 padas are in the Cancer sign. A Cancer sign is a very intuitive, very nurturing, very empathetic oriented energy. So here when the 8th house lord gets placed in the nakshatra of Aslesha, but where the 4 padas are in Cancer, so on one end the person, in spite of going through those obstacles, challenges, problems which the 8th house lord brings, yet is still very nurturing, very caring, very empathetic, and yet very responsible in spite of those challenges. And the person is ready to transform himself because of his very nurturing, empathetic ability also, and how the person will be able to take care of his domestic life, will be able to take a family, will be able to take a home in spite of those challenges. Yet the person is very secretive in spite of when going through those issues and obstacles, and only when the transformation is forced upon the person and the person goes through a lot of painful situations will the person become critiquing or become insecure also. Sometimes the person wanting to guard his family, guard himself, guard his resources can also be little secretive, but also little prone to lying or keeping the person's cards close to his or her chest. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Jyeshtha, where all 4 padas are in the Scorpio sign. So here Scorpio sign obviously has the 8th house energies, and the 8th house lord has gone into the sign of Scorpio and in the nakshatra of Jyeshtha. Jyeshtha also means the eldest or acting like the eldest or the oldest. So here the person will have a certain degree of protective energy to his family, to his team members, to those people who he feels as part of his team or as part of his loved ones or his nearest and dearest. But at the same time, when the person faces those obstacles, those challenges can sometimes become very rash and impulsive because of facing those challenges, and can also lose his or her patience and how to handle those obstacles, handle those issues. And so, but yet because of the person's mental brilliance can also bring about the transformation. But in bringing about the change, in bringing about the transformation, the person can also be very analytical about the choices that the person has, and there will also be a lot of internal conflict within the person, what to do, what not to do, who to trust, who not to trust. And so the person will also be somebody who will also want to delve deep into what choices the person has before making the decision. And sometimes the person will depend on the most trustworthy of people and himself be very trustworthy in those issues, in those problems. But if in spite of changing, in spite of this transformation, the person doesn't find success, then the person can become little fault finding or little complaining, also even hot tempered. So the native has to guard against this. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Revati, where all 4 padas are in the Pisces sign, remember it's still ruled by Mercury, so the analytical ability, the educated approach, the approach to having information and using the information to take decisions is still there. And because it is the nakshatra of Revati, the person will be very optimistic, will be very idealistic. However, because the 8th house lord has gone into the nakshatra of Revati, so in spite of the person's optimism, in spite of the person's grace, yet the person, when the person goes through those obstacles, those challenges with the 8th house lord's presence and Revati brings about, then the person will also be somebody who will become very hopeful and very giving, and also become very sincere, because the Revati nakshatra makes a person optimistic in the face of challenges, in the face of obstacles. So here the person, in spite of those issues, will still be very principled and will have a very orthodox and sometimes even a very superstitious approach to how to face those obstacles, the challenges, and many times the transformation that the person comes or brings about is on the time tested changes or the time tested steps that somebody can take, rather than being too rushful in taking those decisions. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatras ruled by Venus, all the 4 padas of each of the nakshatras that Venus rules are in the fire signs of either Aries or in the Leo or in the Sagittarius sign. So when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatras ruled by Venus, so there will be changes, challenges, obstacles to materialistic results, materialistic desires, and also how the person's relationships with the opposite gender turns out. So when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Bharani, where all 4 padas are in the AV sign, so here this is the person who is very desirous, who is also very lustful of materialistic results, of also relationship with the opposite gender. So when there are obstacles to this person's desire of material results, or the person's attraction towards the opposite gender, or what the person can get from or gain from the opposite gender, so this person, it's not easy for the person to persevere in the face of obstacles, of the challenges. And so many times the person will resent the restrictions that are put upon the person because of obstacles that are thrown up by the zodiac by virtue of the 8th house lord getting into the nakshatra of Bharani. And so in spite of those materialistic desires being put up, speed breaker on, because of the person's facing obstacles and challenges brought about by the 8th house lord's placement there, yet the person is intelligent enough and can have the forbearance and the fierce resolve, because of the very materialistic natures of Bharani nakshatra, to be somebody who will not give in to vain, but yet be able to bring about a change and the transformation. And through the transformation, the person will also reach success. And many times the person will have the success go to his or her head and then become too indulgent and even extravagant when the success comes to them post the transformation, which is brought about by the 8th house lord getting placed in the nakshatra of Bharani. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Purva Falguni, ruled by Venus, where all the 4 padas of Purva Falguni are in the Leo sign. So here the obstacles, the challenges, the transformation will come to the person, but expecting the person still to be very responsible, to take the lead in facing those challenges and obstacles, and take the lead also in transforming how the person faces those challenges. So here the person still will be very loyal, will be very honest, and will still be very generous in how the person faces those challenges, the problems which are brought about by the 8th house lord's placement in the nakshatra of Purva Falguni. Yet the person will be very independent, will still be very accommodative, and even in the transformation which is brought about because of the obstacle the person faces, yet the person will be very peaceful in his or her demeanor. And yet the person will also bring about not only a certain degree of honesty and loyalty in those challenges, in those problems, but will also bring about a certain youthful energy in facing those challenges, in those problems, when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Purva Falguni. So the material results will come only when the person is able to showcase the leadership and the responsibility in the face of challenges, problems, and then coming about with the transformation which the 8th house lord's presence in the Purva Falguni Nakshatra brings about. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Purvashada, where all the 4 padas of the Purvashada nakshatra are in the Sagittarius sign, very fiery sign. So on one hand, the person will be able to face the obstacles, the challenges, the problems which are brought about by the 8th house lord getting into the nakshatra of Purvashada, but with the wisdom, the learning orientation and the ability to think large-heartedly and to be able to think beyond the person's experiences, and in fact will bring the person's higher experiences into play. So the person will still be very compassionate in spite of those challenges and will strive to be able to get the results. And sometimes because of having over challenges or those challenges which the person cannot overcome, sometimes can come across as more authoritative, but yet be very ambitious, so that the person can bring about the change and the transformation, so that the person goes undefeated or comes out as a winner. So sometimes this energy can also make the person very confrontational and also very deeply emotional also. Yet the person can be somebody who's very giving, in spite of coming across as very adamant or even argumentative. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatras ruled by moon, all the 4 padas of the moon ruled nakshatras lie in the earth sign. So here the person will showcase a certain degree of humility, steadiness and practicality while facing those challenges, obstacles, problems that the 8th house lord's presence in the moon ruled nakshatras brings. Yet when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Rohini, where all the 4 padas of Rohini lie in the Taurus sign. So here, when the person will face challenges, problems, obstacles, certain issues which the 8th house lord brings about, the person will still be very creative in how the person faces those challenges. Normally, such a person is very imaginative, very appreciative of luxuries and beauty, and is very charismatic. But in the face of challenges and problems, sometimes the person does not know whether to continue to be indulgent or to chase materialism, or to be able to first bring about the transformation which the 8th house lord's presence in Rohini brings about, but also with the imagination that Rohini gives you to be able to bring about that transformation, to bring about the change. Sometimes the person may, in facing those issues and problems, may come across as very stubborn. Yet the person, in spite of coming as stubborn, as short-tempered, sometimes even violent, will yet be somebody who will be very sensitive and will be still be very loyal and be creative in bringing about the solution, bringing about the transformation. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Hasta, where all the 4 padas of the Hasta nakshatra lie in the Virgo sign. Now because it is a moon ruled nakshatra, so obviously the person will still be very sincere, will be very kind, will also be somebody who is very possessive and very attached to the results of the Hasta nakshatra, and yet be very service oriented, very giving also, and will also bring about the intelligence or the cleverness which the Virgo sign energy brings. Yet the person will be very creative in spite of facing those challenges and the obstacles that the 8th house lord's presence in the Hasta nakshatra brings, but will still be very pleasant in spite of coming across sometimes as a little impatient, also very critical. Yet because it's the Hasta nakshatra, the person will still be very flexible to changing, to transformation, and because of being ready to bring about the change and transform, so the person will also be skillful in being able to traverse through the obstacles and challenges and then bring about success. And the person will still show a lot of goal orientation in spite of all the obstacles brought about by the 8th house lord's presence in the Hasta nakshatra. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Shravana, where all 4 padas of the Shravana nakshatra are in the Capricorn sign. So here, because it is a moon ruled nakshatra, so the person still be very warm, is very affectionate, will also be somebody who is very empathetic, still a very good listener, very wise also. Yet in spite of going through all the nurturing ability of being a moon ruled nakshatra, yet the person will be very brilliant when the person has to face challenges and problems and has to transform in the face of those challenges and the problems. So the person will be very courageous in needing to change and will be very liberal in his approach, and the person's reputation will still be unharmed because of how the person will be modest and will be willing to learn, yet be willing to change, and being ready to transform because of the discipline, because of the order, because of the structure that the person will employ when facing obstacles because of 4 padas being in the Capricorn sign. So overall, still a very strong presence in the Shravana Nakshatra, being a moon rule nakshatra, where the person will still be able to bring about a lot of transformation and change, and yet be very, very nurturing, yet be very caring to the person, and through the transformation will show the courage to be able to bring about a very liberal approach to change and transformation, and then to material success. Now, when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatras ruled by Mars, this is a pretty strong placement because Mars rules the Scorpio sign, which is the natural 8th house. So when the 8th house lord gets into the Mars ruled nakshatras, where 2 padas are in the earth signs and 2 padas are in the air signs, so it brings about a combination of the humility, the steadiness, the practicality, and the detail orientation of the earth ruled nakshatras, but at the same time being somebody who is very relationship oriented, very society oriented, very smart and very intellectual, that the air sign nakshatras also bring about. So when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Mrigashira, ruled by Mars, where 2 padas are in Taurus and 2 padas are in Gemini, so yeah, the person, when the person faces obstacles or challenges in the material needs or in his remuneration, because Taurus sign is a money sign, then the person sometimes can also become a little dual-minded, which the Gemini sign energy brings. So the person can be very restless, very inquisitive, what to do, how to be able to change, or to be able to face the obstacles, face the challenges. Here the person will employ the person's ability to be able to strive and explore what challenges the person can overcome, what changes the person can go through. So a very, very intelligent approach, even a clever approach to be able to bring about the obstacle, the challenges to naught. So sometimes the person can also, because of fearing confrontation, will be very flexible when the person faces those obstacles, those challenges, yet have the courage and the sincerity and the spontaneity to be able to bring about the change, to bring about the transformation. And because of that enthusiastic nature that the Mrigashira Nakshatra brings, and because of the Martian energy, the person will be able to get success, even material success, problem solving success, in spite of facing challenges, problems, with the 8th house lord's presence in the Mrigashira Nakshatra can bring. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Chitra, where 2 padas of Chitra are in the Virgo sign and 2 padas are in the Libra sign. So here the service orientation of Virgo, but the relationship orientation of Libra will also come in the face of challenges, in the face of obstacles, in the face of issues that the 8th house lord, when going into the nakshatra of Chitra, will present itself. Yet the person will be very dignified in his or her approach, and the person will be very creative in his or her problem solving, and will use the passion or the passionate energy that the Chitra nakshatra brings in, and will still be very organized in the face of challenges and problems. However, sometimes the person's strong ego may come in the face of being able to transform, which is required when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Chitra. Sometimes in the face of those challenges can become too direct rather than being tactful or thoughtful, yet be creative enough to be able to bring about the change, to bring about the transformation, and will also be very artistic or very creative in bringing about the change, in bringing about the transformation. Yet the person will still appreciate the beauty which is brought about by the Chitra Nakshatra in serving and keeping the relationship which the 2 padas and Libra sign bring about. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Dhanishta, where 2 padas of the Dhanishta nakshatra are in the Capricorn sign and 2 padas are in the Aquarius sign. So here the person will bring about a combination of dignified, loyal, structured approach, but at the same time the societal concern, the network oriented concern, and the liberal mindset and the intelligent mindset of the Aquarius sign. So when the person faces challenges, obstacles because of the 8th house lord going into the nakshatra of Dhanishta, but because it is a Mars ruled nakshatra, so the person will still be very confident, very, very energetic, and yet be very stable in spite of those challenges, in spite of the obstacles. And because the person knows without transformation, without change, the person will not be able to go on a different tangent of success or come back on the normal track. So the person will sometimes become too practical in the face of those challenges and problems, and if the person is prevented, then the person can also be very vengeful, even very aggressive in trying to overcome those challenges and problems, especially brought about by people. So sometimes can come across as too adventurous in bringing about the change, or even arrogant when the person faces success after the change, after the transformation is brought about. So overall, because it is the Dhanishta Nakshatra, so the person will combine the confidence, the stability, yet the financial perspective, because of being very practical, because of two padas being in the Capricorn sign. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatras ruled by Jupiter, where 3 padas of the Jupiter ruled nakshatras are in the air sign and 1 pada is in the water sign. So here the person will bring about a combination of being very social, very relationship oriented, very connection oriented, very intelligent, very smart, and yet be somebody who can be very guiding, very advising, very nurturing, but at the same time also having the intuitive, nurturing and imaginative energies of being a water sign in which 1 pada lies. So when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra Punarvasu, where 3 padas are in the Gemini sign and 1 pada is in the Cancer sign, so here the person will also bring about that creativity or the ability to communicate in the face of challenges, in the face of issues and problems, yet having 1 pada in the Cancer sign will still be very protective, very nurturing, will be very benevolent, and will have the intellectual capacity to be able to face those challenges in spite of starting off with a certain degree of hesitation, with a certain degree of dual-mindedness, whether to take one route or the other, to be able to face the obstacle, face the challenge. But because it is also a nakshatra renewal, so the person will be able to employ the intelligent capacity brought about by 3 padas being in Gemini, and yet be very straightforward, and yet be able to bring about the benevolent nature of Punarvasu Nakshatra in spite of the obstacles and challenges, and will be able to transform in spite of those challenges and issues, and yet be very charming and forgiving in spite of those issues and problems, and only because of the sheer intellectual capacity and the ability to nurture and take support while offering support, the person will be able to overcome all the issues, all problems that the 8th house lord brings about when placed in the nakshatra Punarvasu. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra Vishaka, ruled by Jupiter, but where 3 padas are in the Libra sign and 1 pada is in the Scorpio sign. So here 3 padas being in the Libra sign, so the person is very advising, very nurturing, while being very relationship oriented, and will be very balanced towards others. 1 pada being in the Scorpio sign, so this person is very goal oriented, very ambitious, yet very sharp, very keen. Sometimes can come across as very domineering in the relationship, and the person can still, while being domineering, also show the patience which is brought about by 3 padas being in the Libra sign. So many times the person will suppress his or her anger, yet will be full of vigor, and will still come across as very liberal in spite of the issues and obstacles brought about by the 8th house lord in the nakshatra of Vishaka. But because it's Vishaka and the 8th house lord energy, so the person is extremely intelligent, very aggressive, and because of wanting to overcome the challenge, the person has to transform the quarrelsome and the aggressive nature and the impatient nature which the Vishaka Nakshatra brings about. So this is not an easy energy to be able to contend with, but if the person keeps his or her patience, keep the enthusiasm which 3 padas being in Libra sign can bring about, so the person can, in spite of those challenges, bring about the transformation through the goal orientation about which the Vishaka Nakshatra brings about, and the ambition that the Scorpio, 1 pada in Scorpio brings about, and the person, because of that intelligent, aggressive yet patient approach to transformation, to change, will be able to come up on tops, and the person will still be able to keep the relationship intact and still keep a lot of cards kept close to the chest. Many a time the person go through those obstacles, those challenges without even sometimes even the closest of people knowing, when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra Vishaka. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra Purva Bhadrapada, where 3 padas of Purva Bhadrapada nakshatra lie in the Aquarius sign and 1 pada lies in the Pisces sign. So here the person can still be very relationship oriented, very society oriented, very friendly, looks at the larger goals of society, larger benefit of society, while at the same time being very optimistic, very giving, very nurturing, also very empathetic towards others, which the Pisces sign energy brings in. This is the person who loves the occult, the person who loves the mysteriousness. So when the person faces obstacles, the challenges, many times the person may delve too much into the occult or approach people who will give alternate healing, alternate problem solving approaches also. And many times the person may come across as more mysterious to the most loved ones because of facing those challenges and doesn't want to share with people what the problem, with what the issue the person is going through, and will yet be very unflinching in his relationship, will be very resilient in the face of those challenges, in the face of those issues. So sometimes to the nearest of people, the person may come across as two-faced, that the person feels that the nearest people to this person will feel that what's going through this person's mind, why is he not sharing what is going through his life. So this person may initially have a very cynical approach, yet will be very principled, will be very peaceful in spite of those issues or the problem that the person will face because of the 8th house lord getting into the nakshatra Purva Bhadrapada, yet will be able to bring about a transformation, being very logical, being very practical in spite of sometimes facing the most impractical of situations. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatras ruled by Saturn, the Saturn ruled nakshatras have all the 4 padas lying in the water signs of either Cancer, Scorpio or the Pisces sign. So yeah, because it is the water sign in which all the 4 padas lie, so this person can come across sometimes of being very nurturing, very intuitive yet be very imaginative. So when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra Pushya, where all the 4 padas lie in the Cancer sign, so this is a very caring person, nurturing person, kind and generous person in spite of facing challenges, obstacles, issues which the 8th house brings about. But the person sometimes can become too materialistic in the face of those challenges, in the face of those issues, but will bring about a high effort to transform, yet be very helpful, yet be very independent, yet be very organized in the face of those challenges, in the face of the need to transform. So the person will be very sincere in his or her approach, will work towards to be able to bring about the transformation of the change while still being very self-sufficient and yet being somebody who is very service-oriented. And in spite of all the issues and problems, the person will still bring about a very ethical approach, even a very moralistic approach to his life situation. And so this can be one of the best nakshatras in which the 8th house lord can lie, while still being very nurturing, still be somebody who is very caring and yet bring about a very prosperous result with the transformation. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Anuradha, where all the 4 padas lie in the Scorpio sign. So this is a person where in the face of challenges, problems, issues is yet very balanced, is yet very reasonable, yet very logical, and in spite of those challenges will use his or her rapport building skills to be able to be successful in the issue, in the problem, while being somebody who can transform himself. So the person, while the person will have a desire to manage others, will have a desire to control others, yet because of being very organized, being somebody who will be very devoted to his team members, devoted to family members, so in spite of the challenges, problems, will still come across as somebody who can be still be very fun, can be very warm, can be still be very kind in the face of the challenges, because the 4 padas are in Scorpio sign, so the person knows how to keep the cards close to the person's chest. So through the transformation, through the change that the person brings about and a very balanced approach to change or the transformation, the person will come across as very reasonable in his or her change, will still be coming across as very organized through the change, while initially looking as very melancholic, and through the approach of holding the cards close to the chest, yet being somebody who has a deep resolve, being a Saturn ruled nakshatra, the person will still be able to overcome all issues and yet be able to get success, even a material success, when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra Anuradha. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra Uttara Bhadrapada, all 4 padas lie in the Pisces sign. So yeah, this is a person who has a lot of martial qualities while being dedicated, structured, very strong in his approach, because it is a Saturn ruled nakshatra, and yet be very adaptable, very kind in spite of those issues, problems brought about by the 8th house lord getting into the nakshatra Uttara Bhadrapada. But because the person has to bring about a change and transformation to be able to face those issues, the person will be very skillful in being able to traverse through those issues or the problems which are being thrown upon the person from time to time. Yet the person will be very cheerful, very benevolent, and will rise to those delays which the person's greatest results can bring about. This person has a very high degree of enduring pain and still be very sacrificing, in spite of sometimes not being able to control the short-tempered nature that the placement of the 8th house lord can get into or bring about when placed into the nakshatra of Uttara Bhadrapada. This is a person who is a very artistic person or a big art lover, and so the person will also bring in the creative approach to be able to overcome those issues or problems with a lot of wisdom that the Uttara Bhadrapada brings about, especially with the 4 pradas being in the Pisces sign. So the Jupiter energies and the Saturn energies will come about to be able to use the adaptability and the wisdom on the one hand to be able to then bring about the transformation and then to be able to extract themselves and the family and the team members out of issues, out of problems. Now, when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatras ruled by Rahu, this is a very, very strong placement because Rahu is about change, is about transformation. So when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra ruled by Rahu, so where all 4 padas lie in the air signs, whether it's in Gemini or in Libra or Aquarius, so this is a person who can transform, change. Even the relationships can go through a transformation. The social connections can also go through transformation. So when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Ardhara, where all 4 padas lie in the Gemini sign, so this is a person who can be extremely empathetic and can endure a lot of sadness, or even on the other side can also be able to handle a lot of happiness in his ups and downs, because the person can still be very calculative of how to handle extreme degree of sadness, extreme degree of happiness also, and then use the transformation to be able to keep himself or herself on top, come out, keep the head out of the water and also the choppy waters. However, if the person goes through extreme degree of hindrance to be able to overcome the challenge, the problem, then the person can also come across as very hypersensitive and very critical, and so sometimes can also get into an isolated mode, can go into a own thinking mode, and sometimes can also become either very fearful of situation or sometimes even very brash at times. So sometimes can swing to either side. Yet because it is the Ardhara nakshatra and 4 padas are in Gemini sign, so this is a person who can put in a lot of effort to be able to use his or her influencing skills, their communication skills, to be able to come across as somebody who we can work with through the change, through the transformations. Overall, in spite of going through all ups and downs and issues, this person, because of sheer creativity, sheer energy of being a very thinking person, being somebody who can also be very changing or changeable, the person can keep the heads out of water through when the transformation is needed, the change is needed when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Ardhara. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Swati, all 4 padas lie in the Libra sign. So yeah, this is a person who's extremely relationship oriented, extremely connected to his or her family, to his team members, even when going through issues and challenges, and in fact more connected to family and team when going through the challenges and the issues, because it is the Rahu rule nakshatra and 4 padas are in the Libra sign. So sometimes these people can be very friendly but yet be very adamant in the change that they have to go through or transformation that they have to go through when facing those challenges. But because they like their freedom, so they sometimes can come across as very indecisive or even also very inflexible or very mysterious, trying to not tell people or not wanting others to share what the problems they are going through. So sometimes they can be very adventurous and very creative in how they bring about a solution to the challenges. So sometimes they can balance between how much they need to do and what to avoid, what to do and what not to do. So being extremely social yet be very restless, to the sheer creativity, through the ability to be able to keep the relationship intact. And because it is the Swati nakshatra, where relationships are important, the relationships see the person through, and the ability to change comes about because of the strong social and the relationship connection that the person keeps when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Swati. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Satabisha, all 4 padas are in the Aquarius sign, because Aquarius sign is the sign of social causes, society at large. So sometimes this person faces challenges from society itself, from sometimes the closest of people, sometimes the people who the person works with or trusts in his organization, or even in his deepest connections, sometimes with his closest of friends. So this person, when the person faces challenges or problems, can showcase a high degree of adaptability in learning from their mistakes, and has a societal awakening or the social awakening, knowing who to trust and who not to trust. A person who can become very opinionated and also very stubborn when they face those challenges and problems or the setbacks in relationship. But at the same time, the person has a lot of healing ability because of it being in the Rahu rule nakshatra and 4 padas being in Aquarius sign. So the person, being somebody who has ears and eyes to the ground, can come across, can use that energy to be able to know what is needed and how to be able to adapt to the change that is required. The transformation is required in the face of the setbacks. So sometimes the relationships can also become a hindrance, yet the person, being a healer, will be able to come out through all the challenges, all the problems, because of the societal awakening that the person has, and because of the person having his ears and eyes to the ground all the time. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatras ruled by Ketu, Ketu, if you remember, rules the Scorpio sign along with Mars. So Ketu has a lot of 8th house energies. So when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Ketu, many times this also prevents sudden challenges, problems or obstacles to shake this person up. Ketu on the one side keeps this person a lot of cool-headedness and also ability to be able to face sudden events or challenges with a more cool-minded approach. At the same time, because it is the Ketu rule nakshatra, it takes a lot of effort for the person to be able to come out of those challenges, especially because all the 4 padas of the Ketu rule nakshatras are lying in either the Aries sign, Leo sign or the Sagittarius sign. So a lot of dynamism is also required, a lot of strong belief is also required to be able to face the challenges and to transform when the 8th house lord gets into the Ketu rule nakshatras. So when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Ashwini, all 4 padas lie in the Aries sign. Aries sign has Martian energies also. So this is a person who is very dynamic, very spontaneous, very action oriented in the face of issues, challenges, problems that the 8th house lord, when getting into the nakshatra of Ashwini, brings about. So the person sometimes can come across as too brooding or too hasty, also too adventurous to overcome the challenges on the problems when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Ashwini, and yet have the fierce resolve to overcome those issues. This person has this thirst for leadership when the transformation is required. Very, very hardworking, very, very diligent. But because of being very short-tempered, sometimes may come across as little unsteady in how they approach the challenge and how they are able to transform through those problems, through those issues. Yet because of being very action-oriented and because of sometimes being very heroic, the person is still able to come out because of using the Martian energy and the goal-getting energy of the Aries sign when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Ashwini. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Magha, where all the 4 padas of the Magha nakshatra lie in the Leo sign. So here, because it is a Ketu rule nakshatra, obviously the challenges and issues will be difficult to overcome unless the person falls back upon the leadership oriented, the responsibility oriented energy of 4 padas being in the Leo sign. This is a person who has very strong beliefs in being able to take responsibility, accountability. This is a person who takes pride in his leadership ability when facing challenges and problems. So many times the person has to keep the material pressures aside and has to come across as little dominating also, when the person has to come across as more solution oriented. Sometimes the solutions are too complex for the person's understanding to be able to grasp those challenges and grasp the change that is required. So to the people who are closest, the person may come across as either not knowing what's happening, or sometimes on the other side too arrogant. Yet the person is too respecting of the orthodox, of being somebody who also depends on the rules and regulations, and being very ambitious because it is a strong nakshatra of responsibility, accountability of 4 padas being in the Leo sign. So this person is free-spirited enough, is optimistic enough, is strong beliefs enough to be able to overcome all challenges and all problems because of the sheer ability to take accountability and responsibility when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Magha. Now when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Mula, where all 4 padas lie in the Sagittarius sign. So this is a person who will use the deeply buried experiential energy and experiences to be somebody who will fall back on the experiences when the person will face those challenges and the problems when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Mula. In fact, this person wants to go to the roots, wants to go deep within to be able to understand what is the experiences that they have when they face the challenges earlier, or go to somebody who can help them resolve the challenges or issues or mentor them, because 4 padas are in the Sagittarius sign ruled by Jupiter. So this person is somebody who is very disciplined and is very devoted, and will also be somebody who will use their learning and the ability to have the experiential learning come to their rescue when they go through challenges and problems. So this is a person who may be able to go through all the challenges, the pains, the calamities, but with the optimistic energies. And this is the energy where the person will rise like a phoenix from the ashes because of having going deep down to the roots of the problems and solve the problem at the root level, and be able to use the deeply buried experiences that they are able to use from either their own learning or falling back on the learning of an expert or a guru or a mentor who they are able to approach. So somebody who is very free thinking and yet be somebody who is very principled in the approach to all the issues and problems and yet come up on top is when the 8th house lord gets into the nakshatra of Mula. So friends, now that we have seen how the transformative energy, the change bringing energy of the 8th house lord is brought about when the 8th house lord gets into different nakshatras, see where your 8th house lord is placed in which nakshatra, if it's forming different conjunctions, doshas or yogas apart from its placement in the different nakshatras, and use that energy, understanding the yogas or the doshas or the dignity, transformation and the change that is required to be able to come up on top because of the 8th house lord getting into such a difficult position, using the nakshatra energies to your advantage. So friends, like this video, share this video, and please reach out to me, the links given below if you're looking for a personal consultation from me. Until some other time with some other video, this is your friend astrologer and guide Irfan signing off.